Welcome to episode 489 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Meyers, screenwriter and blogger over at sellingyourscreenplay.com. Today I am interviewing Daniel Iske, whose horror anthology series The Dead Hour is being released on Tubi and Amazon. We talk about this series and how it all came together for him. This is a project that he and his partners originally bootstrapped with very little money, but after a few episodes, they were able to raise more money and ended up doing 3 seasons of this series, raising more money each time they did a season. So now they're releasing the whole series, as I said, on Tubi and Amazon here in the next couple of weeks, and we talk through this whole process with him. So stay tuned for that interview. SYS's six-figure screenplay contest is open for submissions. Just go to www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/contest. Our final deadline is July 31st. We're looking for low budget shorts and features. I'm defining low budget as less than 6 figures. In other words, less than $1 million US. We've got lots of industry judges reading scripts in the later rounds. We're giving away thousands in cash and prizes. We have a short film category, 30 pages or less. So if you have a low budget short script, by all means, submit that as well. I've got a good number of industry judge producers who are looking specifically for short scripts to produce. If you want to submit to the contest or learn more about it, just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/contest. Also, once again, this year we're running an in-person film festival in tandem with our screenplay contest. It's for low-budget films produced for less than $1 million US. We have features and shorts. The festival is going to take place here in Los Angeles, California in early October. If you produced a short film or know someone who has, by all means, please do submit it, or a feature film, obviously. The shorts are super easy to program, so if you want to have a screening here in Los Angeles, this is a pretty easy way to do it. As I said, short films are very easy to program. We have a nice theater in Glendale. It's called the Look Dine-In Cinema. It's a really high-end movie theater I've been able to secure for this festival. So it would be a great screening, for all the films, the features and shorts that do get accepted into the festival. If you have a finished film, or as I said, know someone who would, please do consider submitting it. You can learn more about that by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/festival. Our actual page for taking submissions is actually on Film Freeway, and you'll see a link on that Selling Your Screenplay/festival page. But you can also just go to Film Festival and search for SYS's six-figure film festival and screenplay contest, and we should come up as well. So once again, if any of this sounds like something you'd like to learn more about, definitely check out sellingyourscreenplay.com/contest, or just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/festival if you have a finished film. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes, or leaving a comment on YouTube, or retweeting the podcast on Twitter, or liking or sharing it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread word about the podcast, so they're very much appreciated. Any websites or links that I mention in the podcast can be found on my blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcast, and then just look for episode 489. If you want my free guide, How to Sell a Screenplay in 5 weeks, you can pick that up by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. It's completely free. Just put in your email address and I'll send you a new lesson once per week for 5 weeks, along with a bunch of bonus lessons. I teach the whole process of how to sell your screenplay in that guide. I teach you how to write a professional log line and query letter, and how to find agents, managers, and producers who are looking for material. Really is everything you need to know to sell your screenplay. Just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. So a quick few words about what I'm working on. I haven't done a real update in a few weeks, but I have been busy working on a few different projects. I'm still working on the Rideshare Killers NFTs. We're going to be doing a big giveaway with the NFTs, and I'm getting that all sorted out. We're going to be giving away literally thousands and thousands of these NFTs, so it's not a simple thing to just push them out. I've got to get quite a few things in place, and then the whole thing has to ultimately kind of be automated, because it's literally going to be thousands. So I'm working through that this week and probably another week or two. We're hoping we can give away enough of these to kind of hit a critical mass that really creates some buzz around the movie and really hopefully bring some eyeballs back to it. So really trying to do some marketing for the Rideshare Killer and just get more people interested in the film. And then the other big thing I've been working on, I've been talking about this on the podcast now for probably a year, but still working on my rewrite with my indie rom-com. It's going very slowly, needless to say, as I'm just pushing on so many different fronts with so many different projects going on. But I basically have the project ready to go in terms of the financing and stuff. I still have to get figure out locations and cast and crew and all of that sort of stuff. But once the script is in place, I think I'll be able to get the funding in place fairly quickly. And then, we'll be off to the races, getting locations and hiring crew and casting actors and all that sort of stuff. And obviously, it's just taking up a lot of times with the film festival and screenplay contest. So those are definitely, pulling me away from this rewrite. But as I said, hopefully we're going to be ramping up, getting that rewrite done and then getting into pre-production here shortly. I really would like to get into production, but I don't want to rush through the script development. I do feel like with the Rideshare Killer, there was at least a little bit of rush, and there were some good reasons for that. But I just want to really feel good about this script, not feel rushed, even if it takes me an extra 6 months or even a year. I mean, at the end of the day, what's really the rush? Just try and make it as good as possible. So that's kind of where I'm at with my indie rom-com. Anyways, those are some of the things I've been working on. Now let's get into the main segment. Today I'm interviewing writer-director Daniel Iske. Here is the interview. Welcome, Daniel, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
So to start out, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your background. Where did you grow up and how did you get interested in the entertainment business?
I grew up in Nebraska on a farm, believe it or not. My brother and I used to, we'd be bored. So we would grab a VHS camera and just started making films, with, Star Wars guys or G.I. Joe guys, and just kind of goofy stuff. And I was just taken right away. I loved kind of the movie making business, the storytelling business. Started making, little movies with my friends in high school, went to film school at Nebraska, and then just kind of started making films after that.
Okay. So let's talk about that just for a second. I'm in Los Angeles, so I run into a lot of USC grads in this. It's just, how would you now, someone that's been through film school in Nebraska, it's not USC, but there's some great programs out there that are not necessarily as heralded as USC. But what is your take when someone comes to you now, you've been through the gauntlet a little bit and they say, should I go to film school? What is your recommendation on that?
I mean, when I started at Nebraska, the film major was brand new. Like we had like a storage closet with one Mac, computer.
Uh-huh.
Now at Nebraska, the Johnny Carson Fund has given millions and millions of dollars because Johnny Carson went, or is from Nebraska and his family. And so now the kids there have all these toys and all this cool stuff. So it's way different than when I went.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing is better than actually going out and doing it, learning, making mistakes, having to overcome obstacles on set, just doing as many films as you can, working with the crew, learning how to work with actors, to collaborate, to take constructive criticism. So that's kind of my take on it.
I got you. So let's just talk about, so then you're out of film school, and then you're starting to do some films. I noticed on IMDb, your first film credit is one that you directed called The Wretched. And I guess you also edited as well. Maybe just quickly, how did you get that? So clearly you're not super experienced when you're doing this movie. Maybe you have some film school experience, but how did you get that one into production? How did you get that film produced?
That was my first venture into horror. I had done some other kind of genres, and then my writer, Scott Coleman, who co-created The Dead Hour with me, came to me and said, I have this horror script. Growing up on a farm, I had a location, and we just kind of went out and filmed it. It started as The Wretched, and then a few years later, it got picked up and became Fields of the Dead. So it kind of morphed into a new title, and we got released on Redbox and on demand and all this stuff, which was a mind-blowing experience. I never expected a little film that we made, out in the country to be in bread boxes and grocery stores and stuff like that. So that was kind of my first venture into horror. And after that, this is kind of going to set up The Dead Hour. We wanted to do more kind of horror stories, but we wanted to do a series. And so we kind of came up with The Dead Hour, the horror anthology series, where we wanted to tell different short horror stories, kind of like campfire tales, urban legends. And so that's kind of the genesis of The Dead Hour.
Okay, so yeah, so that's a good transition into it. So just give us sort of an overview. You did this for a number of years. It looks like there's 3 seasons. There's a bunch of episodes per season. You wrote some of them, directed some of them, produced some of them. So just talk us through that. And it was your partner Scott. Maybe even take a step back. So how did you meet Scott? How was that? Where did you originally meet him, and how did you guys form a partnership?
Very young. We went to high school together, and
Okay.
then we went to the same college. He wasn't in, film, but he was always a screenwriter, and I liked, working with somebody, I was friends with, had a good passion. He was way more on the writer side, and I was definitely more of like the vision, coming
Mm-hmm.
up with concepts, executing them, and he was good with creating characters and writing dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's always been a good collaboration. And so we worked on The Wretched Fields of the Dead, and then we went into the Dead Hour. And so we started really um, with the concept. We said, okay, how do we tie these together? We were fans of, Twilight Zone, Tales from the Crypt. We wanted a host. And so we came up with the idea to have this, mysterious late night radio DJ who was, in this little studio and was telling these stories to her audience. And so she would introduce the story, and then we would delve into it visually through the filmmaking part of it.
Hmm. Gotcha. Okay, so what was the original concept here? You were going to do a series. Did you have distribution? Like, as an independent filmmaker, this is something that I've wondered about, and I haven't really seen a lot of examples. As an independent filmmaker myself, I know when you start to distribute stuff, every film project is basically a one-off. You have to build a new audience. It's a new title. So your things, and I've always thought, doing something with some consistency, you might be able to bring that audience along over the course of many episodes, many years. So what was sort of your thinking in going into this? Like, why not do another feature? It sounds like The Wretched was fairly successful. You made a low budget movie, you got distribution, made some money. Why not follow that model? Why go and then start doing, episodic?
So when we didn't get the film Fields of the Dead, which was originally called The Wretched, we did the festival run, and we didn't have distribution at the time. It took us about 6-7 years before we finally did get kind of picked up. Well, about 5 years before somebody kind of found us.
Hmm.
They found a screener at one of the film festivals that we were in and approached us. So we actually started filming or creating the Dead Hour before we ever thought, oh, we could get distributed. We just did the
Mm-hmm.
film thinking, oh, we'll do the festival thing and maybe put it on disc on ourselves and move on. So when we started the Dead Hour, it was originally supposed to be and was just a web series that was going to be on our website, and we would just try to push it and see if we could catch someone's attention. So that really, when we were filming the original, we were filming all of these episodes, a lot of these streaming platforms weren't even in existence for us. So
Mm-hmm.
the show has kind of, we were, I don't want to brag, but a little bit ahead of our time, where we were kind of trying to push our own thing. And now with these platforms, it allows filmmakers. We filmed everything in Omaha, Nebraska, with local talent, with pretty much no budget. It was just basically food and props and things like that. And we're able to next week, hopefully reach an audience that may like our show. So that's pretty cool, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about just your writing process in general. And we can talk specifically about some of these episodes that you watch. So first off, as you guys are coming up with this, did you and Scott both have some ideas, and so you went off and ran with those ideas? You would write a script, he would write a script.
Yeah. So for about maybe a year, we would just have like creative powwows where we would spend a week, or a week or two just coming up with first just random ideas. One of the things I like to say is one of the episodes, it was called The Hole, and the synopsis was, a man is digging a hole in his backyard. Why? And that was it. We just would throw something, just a random idea. We'd come have notebooks full of like hundreds and hundreds of ideas. I would pick the ones I liked of his, and he'd pick a few of mine. And then we'd start kind of like fleshing them out with a little bit more of a one-page synopsis. And
Mm-hmm.
then, we'd pick the ones from that we liked. And we go and Scott did most of the full blown script writing. So he would take it from there and say, okay, and get a script. I get a script back. We make revisions,
Mm-hmm.
and then we would have maybe 20 scripts, and we'd say, okay, let's do these five. I think these are the best. These are ones I think we could pull off, because there was at least one episode or more in the second season that I was like, we love this idea, but we just don't have the capability of pulling this
Mm-hmm.
off. So in
Yeah.
season two, we kind of had a budget. We had more people, we had more crew. People were kind of digging what we were doing and wanted to help. And so we were able to this our lead episode in season two called Fright Fest. It's like this couple goes on a date in a overnight, horror movie marathon lock-in this old movie theater with a bunch of extras and stuff like that, because
Mm-hmm.
things are coming to life off the screen. And we were like, this is so cool. We never thought we'd be able to pull this off, and we were, really stepped it up. And that's
Mm-hmm.
when we were like, this is, we're really finally telling the stories that we want to tell in the way
Yeah.
we want to tell them.
Yeah. And maybe you could talk to that a little bit, and maybe even talk to it as a director. What are some tips for screenwriters that want to watch low budget or want to write low budget films? Obviously, there's the normal stuff. You can't have helicopters, big crowd scenes, stadium scenes, but there's some other things, tips that you could give us that are maybe not quite as intuitive, that you could tell writers, what, as a director, as a producer, these things are going to be costly, and you don't get the bang for your buck out of them. That's going to, for a low budget production, that you can really afford them.
That's a great point, because you want to, as writers, because I'm a writer too, but as a director, you want writers to have no limits, to be as creative
Mm-hmm.
as possible, and really not put constraints on, because you don't want to put constraints on creativity. But you know writers do need to kind of think about the logistics of it, because I remember the Fright Fest script was great, but I told Scott, at this moment, like, we can't, like, we just can't pull this off. So I think having, going in kind of knowing, okay, if this has a realistic shot of being made by a director or producer with a really low budget, I have to be conscious of that, and I have to keep that in mind. How is this going to be made? If I have these scenes, well, that's not going to be possible to do. So I kind of do have to think a little bit like a producer or director, with a budget in mind and locations in
Mm-hmm.
mind. And if you have a scene where there's 300 extras running down the street, is that really possible? How are you going to get 300 people to willingly show up,
Mm-hmm.
and do this for a day, and things like that.
Yeah, yeah. So another thing I'd be curious just to get your opinion on. Again, I'm a low budget filmmaker here in LA, so I see the LA scene, and there's a lot of advantages to being in LA. You have access to a deep pool of talented cast and crew. I'd say that's probably the single biggest
Right.
advantage. Whereas when you get outside, but the disadvantage is you show up at a restaurant and tell them you're shooting a film, they want $5,000 a day because CBS was
Right.
just there yesterday paying them $5,000 a day. So you run into permitting issues. There's sort of a negativity that comes with trying to shoot on streets and yards and stuff. But what do you find as some of the advantages? Like you talked about, you had this farm. It sounds like your first one. But what do you find with cast and crew? Are there some tips? How do you find the talented cast and crew in Nebraska?
I think you're definitely right. There's pros and cons, being in LA, and there's pros and cons, here, like, doing local, in Nebraska, where, maybe we're able to get into some locations, because most restaurants or places are like, once, they're like, you're doing what? And then they're like, well, that's pretty cool, actually,
Mm-hmm.
and they're kind of excited, and they're like, oh, this will be kind of neat, and it's a story to tell. Um, and we have city locations, we have rural locations that are really cool here. We have cornfields, we have abandoned barns, and
Mm-hmm.
kind of cool locations that maybe are a little unique to the Midwest than maybe other places. And there is great talent. I mean, there are a lot of actors, and especially kind of the younger actors who maybe haven't moved to the coast yet, that are looking for you know uh, projects to be a part of, to kind of put on their reel before they
Mm-hmm.
move out. So there's a chance to kind of capture lightning in a bottle with
Mm-hmm.
some actors who are starting out, who are looking for a good project.
Yeah, yeah. And what about the crew? Can you find an experienced sound guy, an experienced makeup artist? Especially for something like horror, you're going to need that makeup probably. But certainly you want experienced sound guy, experienced cinematographer. Those sort of technical chops you need.
Right. I mean, so I mean, it's not like we have, the union crew, like and stuff that LA can offer, but there are a lot of talented people that are working on, their own projects on corporate stuff. So
Hmm.
you actually can find a really good, camera person, really good sound guy, good
Hmm.
makeup artists. I mean, some people are just doing it for fun. Some people are, I mean, there's not enough horror work to have a full blown but there are many different kind of horror makeup crews that just like love doing it. They're just kind of a
Hmm.
fan of film and fan of horror, and they're around. Once we got the word out about the show, it was amazing to see people like just coming from
Hmm.
everywhere. They're like, yeah, this would be cool to work on.
Yeah. And so what does that actually mean, getting the word out there? Do you go and place like a Craigslist ad? We're crewing up. We need a cinematographer. Are you involved with some local film communities that, you sort of network that way? But what are the actual logistics of actually putting word out there in a place like Nebraska?
Yeah, we just have a really great local network, here in Nebraska, of just a lot of people, especially over the last, I mean, it's grown so much over the last 10, 15 years of, especially with the equipment and
Hmm.
people just, being able to just shoot a lot. We have a great Omaha Film Festival here, in Omaha. So there's an outlet for people, and for the films that were 15 years ago at the film festival to where they are now is just incredible. There's lots of different,
Hmm.
talented people who, most of them, they don't do it for a living, but they're interested. They want to tell films, and so there are people out there. There's Facebook pages and networking events, and like I said, the film festival has really brought people together, and people that
Hmm.
want to be a part in either acting or crew. They hear about your projects now, and so you get a lot
Yeah.
of people that can pick, and choose and say, yeah, I'd like to help out this weekend if you guys are filming.
Hmm. And so, what is your recommendation to a young filmmaker? Do you recommend they go and be a volunteer at the film festival? Just show up and try and network and see as many films, try and do a short film and get the short film in so you're a filmmaker? Just what is your recommendation?
Absolutely, go to every networking event, every mixer, go to the film festival, talk to other
Hmm.
directors, crew on as many short films and things that you can, and then start making your own. Get your team together
Hmm.
and with a camera and film for maybe a weekend or two, and put a short film together that you can submit to a couple festivals, and just start from
Hmm.
there. And you got to plant the seed to watch it, to get it to grow.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So let's just dig into your writing process a little bit. I'm always curious just to hear how just the process of getting through a script. When do you typically write? Are you a morning guy? You a late night guy? Do you go to Starbucks? You need a little ambient noise? What does just your writing process look like?
Sometimes it's nice to be out. I mostly like to be left alone. And I'm a notebook guy. I
Hmm.
can't type very well. It's just like I have just notebooks, and I keep one, on my nightstand next to my bed, because I'll wake up with an idea,
Hmm.
and my brain's kind of crazy like that. But yeah, I'm more just scribbling in a notebook and then typing it out later. So I'll have
Hmm.
the whole episode when I do mine. I know Scott types more than I do, but when I do mine, I have a actual 14 pages of scribbled dialogue in a notebook,
Hmm.
done. So, and then I like that process from going from the notebook to the computer and the actual script, because then I make a lot of my adjustments and
Hmm.
things. It's like giving it a second look for me. And then obviously me and Scott always trade back and forth and get each other's feedback, because we
Hmm.
miss things or add things, that the other person isn't seeing. So we have a pretty good process, through that.
Gotcha. And you call it the dead hour. Are these 1 hour episodes? Each episode was 1 hour?
Nope. So the dead hour just refers to 2 a.m., which is when like her show is.
Gotcha.
So each episode is, they're between like 15 and 22 minutes, so they're pretty short. But we're able to do that because we write DJ Raven, who's the host of the Dead Hour show, played by Melissa Holder. We write her a little paragraph intro opening in this kind of unique voice, that she's
Hmm.
really taken on, and it's able to set the story up. She kind of gives us everything we need to know so that we can just jump right in to the episode. We don't have to have a big build up. So it's a little bit different than writing a regular screenplay where you have the acts 1, 2, and 3, and you
Hmm.
spend most of the first act. We get the first act done in the intro, in that first minute, So that's a little bit unique in the screenwriting process for us to get all that done in that paragraph, and
Mhm.
then we start right in basically with act two of this short story after that.
And so what did this look like as you guys are going through this process? It sounded like you did a bunch of scripts, realized some of them you just couldn't shoot for that first season. So how many scripts did you actually have once you said, okay, we're going to go shoot these?
I would, oh, that's a good question. I mean, we had way more. I mean, we maybe had 20 scripts going in to the first five, and then we, pretty much pulled in the second season from the ones we just weren't able to do but really liked. And I think we
Mhm.
maybe added one or two new ones in the second season from just new ideas that we had kind of come up with during the process that we didn't have originally. Um, yeah, there were a lot of episodes that we still haven't done yet. There were episodes that we filmed the intro for with Melissa that we,
Mm.
haven't even done yet, and yeah, so that's kind of unique too.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so once you had you sort of settled on a couple of scripts, what is that next step for actually raising some money and actually putting the crew together and getting into production?
So the first season we just did out of pocket. The second season we held some fundraisers, some mixers and things, and some a lot of people in the community showed up and wanted to help
Mhm.
out. So we were able to have a little bit of a budget to pay some makeup artists to get some better equipment. Get into some locations with some fees that we were able to pay to get in. And yeah, and then we would have our open casting calls for local talent, and then we would say, okay, these are the scripts we're doing. We need to start pre-production. We need to cast, start finding locations, and start setting up filming dates. So
Just real quick, describe these events that you're talking about. When you said fundraising, the first thing I thought of course, was like Kickstarter, Indiegogo. But it sounds like you set up some sort of events. They're like little mixers. You meet at a bar. You rent some space. You try and do a presentation. What do these mixers actually look like? And how do they work?
yeah, one was like in a local brewery that was big. I can't remember where the other one was. I
And you
really
just
can't. But
invited people in your network, friends and family. You told
yeah, we
friends and
just
family to tell everyone.
yeah, just like through Facebook and different different ways we would say we're having this fundraising event. We would. It was after the first season. We designed these like cool vintage 50s style like posters of the episodes. We would have auctions, to the crowd. We had a couple
Mhm.
hundred people there, so people could donate. They could buy the posters for an auction and different things like that. And so it was really cool to have that kind of support locally. It's just people who wanted to see the show keep going and be a part of it.
And so what is your pitch to them? Like when on Facebook, are you saying, okay, we're going to, watch some of these episodes and you can, build this community. And by the way, there's free beer. Like what is the actual pitch to get people in the door?
Yeah, it was, I think it was, probably beer. It was come be a part of this. You
Uh-huh.
can meet other people. We're gonna be there. We had the cast, and crew of the first season. We just basically said this is just gonna be a fun night for an hour or
Mhm.
two. Even if you don't want to give anything, if you just want to come out and be a part of it, that would be cool too. And so we always had overwhelming support on stuff like that.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. So now there's 3 seasons that you guys completed and there's 4 episodes per season.
Well, we had five in the first season, five in the second season, and
Okay.
then two in the third. And
Okay.
then we kind of halted production for various reasons. And then we were trying to get season three kind of back up and running, and we were just kind of running into some problems. And I guess we were all getting a little bit older at the time, and we were kind of had lives and kids and stuff that were
Mhm.
taking a little bit more of a priority. And and we were always looking to kind of start things back up, and then COVID hit, and
Mhm.
then right, I think after COVID is when Terror Films came in, and Joe kind of reached out, and he had heard about the show and watched it and said, I think we could do something, with this on the streaming platforms that exist. So we've kind of been in that kind of holding pattern and
Mhm.
getting these ready for the release the last 2 years. So that's kind of been our journey.
Gotcha. Did you originally publish these on like YouTube on your channel as you had originally anticipated?
Yeah, they just lived on our website, and so I mean, we wouldn't really get. I mean, it would be like 1,000 views or something like that. So they just kind of lived there for a
Mhm.
while, and then when we, obviously we took them down about 2 years ago. I think it was in preparation for the release. So yeah, I mean, they just kind of lived as a web series. We were just kind of had them out there.
Mhm.
But we never, unless you stumbled upon it, or saw something,
Yeah.
mostly just local people that knew us that were, would watch.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And do you know how Terra Films found you? Like he just found on the website, but was it a recommendation? Did you guys send them a cold query letter saying, check us out? Was there anything?
it was, I knew this guy, Aaron Parks, who produced our, Fields of the Dead movie, and he was in LA, and I think the story was he just ran into Joe somewhere, and Joe asked him if he knew of any kind of horror projects, and he goes, actually, yeah, you should talk to my
Huh.
buddy Dan. So he set up a phone call with us about 2 years ago, I think it was, and he's like, you should talk to this guy. I think you're going to really like him. He's got a plan for this, that could reach a much, much wider audience than where
Mhm.
we're at now. And so that's just kind of how it went down.
Yeah,
And so we had a
perfect.
conversation, and I did like Joe, and I liked what he was pitching, and I liked,
Mhm.
what he thought the show could be on these platforms. And so that was pretty exciting.
Yeah, 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 for sure. So I always like to just end the interviews by just asking the guest if there's anything they've seen recently. Obviously, we'll pitch the Dead Hour here to our audience, but is there anything you've seen on HBO, Netflix, Hulu that you can just recommend to our mostly screenwriting audience?
So I'm pretty sure it's on Netflix, but 1899. It's a series. I think it's only. I don't. It's definitely one season. I don't. It just came out in November.
Hmm.
It was really incredible. And the way it ended, I don't know if there's going to be more seasons or if it was just a limited series.
Hmm.
But it really reminded me of what um, the old series Lost was and could have been if they hadn't done the later seasons the way they did. So
Uh-huh.
it's definitely like this mystery. And I think it's a German, I think it was filmed I think it's like a German studio
Hmm.
series, but 1899,
Okay.
the dubbing is really good. You can barely notice it.
Hmm. Perfect.
And
Perfect. Yeah, that's a
that's
great,
great.
yeah, I haven't seen that. That sounds like a great recommendation. How
Yep.
can people see the Dead Hour? Do you know what the release schedule for the Dead Hour is going to be like?
So next Friday, May 12th, is the streaming release date. It's going
Okay.
to be on a bunch of streaming platforms: Tubi, Amazon, Google Play, Watch Movies Now, Kings of Horror. Uh, I can never remember all of them.
Yeah, yeah,
There's a
yeah.
whole
So
bunch, but there's a whole bunch.
yep, yep, perfect, perfect. And what's the best way for people to just keep up with what you're doing? Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, anything you're comfortable sharing, I will round up and put in the show notes.
I'm not on Twitter, which amazes everybody, but I'm on Instagram. The Dead Hours Show has a page on Facebook with followers. You can just Dead Hour series.
Okay.
It's easy to find. So
Perfect, perfect. Yeah, I'll round that stuff up for the show notes. People can click over
perfect.
to it. Well, Daniel, I really appreciate you coming on talking with me today. Good luck with this
Thank you.
project and good luck with future projects as well.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks. All right.
Bye.
Bye.
SYS's From Concept to Completion Screenwriting course is now available. Just go to www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/screenwriting course. It will take you through every part of writing a screenplay, coming up with a concept, outlining, writing the opening pages, the first act, second act, third act, and then rewriting. And then there's even a module at the end on marketing your screenplay once it's polished and ready to be sent out. We're offering this course in two different versions. The first version, you get the course, plus you get 3 analyses from an SYS reader. You'll get 1 analysis on your outline, and then you'll get 2 analyses on your first draft of your screenplay. This is just our introductory price. You're getting 3 full analyses, which is actually the same price as our 3-pack analysis bundle. So you're essentially getting the course for free when you buy the 3 analyses that come with it. And to be clear, you're getting our full analysis with this package. The other version doesn't have the analysis, so you'll have to find some friends or colleagues who will do the feedback portion of the course with you. I'm letting SYS Select members do this version of the course for free. So So if you're a member of SYS Select, you already have access to it. You also might consider that as an option. If you join SYS Select, you will get the course as part of that membership too. A big piece of this course is accountability. Once you start the course, you'll get an email every Sunday with that week's assignment. And if you don't complete it, we'll follow up with another reminder the next week. It's easy to pause the course if you need to take some time off, but as long as you're enrolled, you'll continue to get reminders for each section until it's completed. The objective of the course is to get you through it in 6 months so that you have a completed, polished screenplay ready to be sent out. So if you have an idea for a screenplay and you're having a hard time getting it done, this course might be exactly what you need. If this sounds like something you'd like to learn more about, just go to www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/screenwriting course. It's all one word, all lowercase. I will, of course, link to the course in the show notes, and I will put a link to the course on the homepage up in the right-hand sidebar. On the next episode of the podcast, I'm going to be interviewing actor, writer, producer Annabelle Monroe. She also runs the Ethos Film Awards here in Hollywood. She's originally from Germany and started her career there as an actor, but then moved to New York City and then Los Angeles, where she lives now. She started to write and produce her own material, her own material so that she could act in it. So that was really her start. We talked through some of those early projects and then some of the later projects that she's gone on to write and produce. So it's very interesting. She's very candid, and I think it's a great story for a lot of writers to hear because she took on that producing hat to make things happen for herself. It wasn't like a natural fit or something that she set out to do. And I think I find myself in sort of a similar situation where I'm doing a lot of producing and getting things off the ground as a producer, just really to get my own scripts into production. So I was fascinated just to talk to her and hear her story. Hopefully everybody that listens to this will as well. So keep an eye out for that episode next week. That's the show. Thank you for listening.